WALB News 10 presents Dialogue, a weekly public affairs program exploring community concerns and spotlighting regional activities.
And good Sunday morning to you, everybody. Welcome to Dialogue across the nation, through the halls of Congress here in Southwest Georgia. People have been remembering the work and the life and the legacy of Congressman John Lewis, someone who has worked with him for many years, who sees him as more than just another congressman, but a dear friend, is our own Congressman Sanford Bishop, who represents the 2nd Congressional District. And he joins us from Washington to reflect on Congressman Lewis. And good to see you, sir. You're in Washington, and I know you may have to run, but we wanted just to talk with you a little bit as you reflect on the life of Congressman Lewis. So talk a little bit about your relationship over the years.
Well, let me just say that I'm just really in the deepest of pain at the loss of my good friend John Lewis. We have been friends for over 52 years. I met John back in 1968, when I was a first-year law student at Emory Law School. I was an archivist at the beginnings of the Martin Luther King Center for Social Change. And John, along with other members of SNCC, Julian Bond, H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, Bernice Reagan would come through the King Center, and I got to meet them and to talk with them and to know them back then. And of course, John went on to head up the Voter Education Project, to become a member of the Atlanta City Council. And around that time, I was a member of the Georgia House of Representatives and had occasion to work with him on Atlanta issues. And of course, John then went to Congress. And 16 years later, I was able to join him as a member of Congress. And we had worked together over the years for, I guess, for almost 28 years. We became very close friends. Our wives became friends. They worked together in the spouses organization in Washington. And John was just a very special person. He was a person of principle. And of course, he's an icon. And being the icon that he is, everyone knows him, everyone loves him. And of course, we consider him the conscience of the Congress because of his devotion to his principles and his steadfast support for the ideals of freedom, justice, fairness, love, and peace. John always based his positions on those principles, and but it didn't matter what anyone else thought. He measured, his metric was those principles, and he was a very special person.
We have been showing some of the photographs that you shared with us with him meeting people, I believe, in either your office or his office, the Congressional Black Caucus, and there was one at, on a podium where either you had introduced him. And speaking of that, your relationship was such that you were able to get him, you were instrumental in getting Congressman Lewis to speak at the dedication of another icon, C.B. King, as they dedicated the courthouse here in Albany in his honor. So talk about that a little bit. That was back in 2002.
Yes, John was a part of the Albany movement, and of course, C.B. King was the foremost civil rights lawyer outside of Atlanta in Georgia. C.B. was a mentor to me as a young civil rights lawyer, and of course, one of my proudest accomplishments was being able to get the federal courthouse funded in Albany, to get it built, and then to get it named for Attorney C.B. King, who did so much for so many in the area of civil rights in middle and southwest Georgia. And of course, to have John Lewis, who was a contemporary of the movement, to come down and to be one of the speakers for the ribbon cutting at the courthouse was just a tremendous boost, and it was a real milestone in history. And of course, John's life really took him all over the country in the name of civil rights. But he spent some really downtime in our area. The Conania Farm up in Sumter County was where members of the movement would go for respite. It was a sort of a safe area where in the midst of the hostility throughout the South, they could go and they could refresh and renew. And of course, John came to speak, I guess a couple of years ago for the America Sumter NAACP. And one of the requests that he wanted was to be able to go back and just visit Conania. Wow. Because 3 years since he had seen it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say is that one of the things that has been so impressive, and I mentioned this to somebody who's coming up a little bit later on in our dialogue this morning, you know, in spite of all of the back and forth and the friction that we've got going on these days, one of the things that's impressed me is that we've got people from both sides of the aisle who are singing his praises and just sharing you know, the warm thoughts that they have about him, because he was endeared to many, many people.
Absolutely, and it was just a real privilege and an honor for me to ride back and forth from Atlanta to Washington and Washington to Atlanta and land in the airports and be walking down the corridor with him and to see the adoration and the people who would stop and ask him for a picture, or who would say how much they loved and respected him. And he always had time for each and every one of them, whether they were mopping the floor, whether they were TSA officers who were checking people in. He always had time for them, and it was just a reflection of the timbre of his character, which is humility.
And before I'll let you go, two things. Speaking of making time, I don't know if you remember this, but my family, hubby had a meeting in D.C., and we also had the opportunity to visit with you. And you arranged an opportunity for us to meet with Congressman Lewis. And it was at the end of the day, it was before selfies and all of that, so we don't necessarily have a picture of that. But he took time, he autographed, I believe, the session report from that day to our children, and he took time and walked around with us and talked with us. And he did just that. He made time for us. So thank you for that memory as well. As we close, what will you miss most about him?
I will miss the inspiration that he always gave to the pursuit of his principles. And that was nonviolent, peaceful protest to achieve peace, love, freedom, fairness, equity for all of humanity. And it didn't matter the station in life, it didn't matter the gender, the sexual orientation. John just wanted to treat all of God's children with dignity. And of course, that I will miss, because we now have to take up the challenge that he left us. Our challenge is to really emulate the life of John Lewis, which is his constant pursuit and his never-ending commitment to freedom, to justice, to fairness, and to equity. And to love and to peace. Those are qualities and those are goals for which John spent his life, and I think that it challenges all of us to continue and to emulate him in pursuit of those goals until we can ultimately achieve what he called the beloved community.
All right, and with that, I say thank you so much. I know you've got to get back to the work there in D.C., but thank you for taking a few moments and sharing your thoughts and your memories of Congressman John Lewis. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you very much.
And stay with us, everybody. When we come back, we'll talk more about Congressman John Lewis with the Honorable Ken Hodges and an original freedom singer, Rutha Harris. And welcome back, everybody. We are still celebrating the life and legacy of Congressman John Lewis. I had the opportunity to also catch up with the Honorable Ken Hodges, who actually got Congressman Lewis to come and speak for a King Day event. And we talk about that as well as some other just wonderful memories about Lewis. Here it is.
I've met and interacted with Congressman Lewis a number of times, both in Georgia and in Washington. He was, of course, the 5th District Representative for 33 years. And when I would go to Washington, either with the local chamber or the Georgia chamber or with the district attorneys to talk about legislation that we needed to help crime victims or something else, Congressman Lewis was always one of the most open and receptive and genuinely caring and sincere people. He was very busy, always in leadership in the Congress, yet took the time to meet with us and hear our concerns, and just what a tremendous loss. He'll be, as he should, remembered forever, affectionately by all, by both sides of the aisle. I've been watching on social media the outpouring of love for him from people of all political persuasions, as it should be, because he is a national treasure.
What do you think his greatest legacy will be?
Well, clearly it's his leadership in the civil rights movement. He was one of the original chairmen of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Council. He was one of the Big Six leading the March on Washington in 1963. Prior to that, he was an original freedom rider in the early 60s. I think that was in 61. And most famously, the settlement of Montgomery March across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in 1965, where he was beaten severely, and he was never deterred. He was never deterred from doing the right thing and making sure that he stood nonviolently in pursuit of freedoms for all, and he's accomplished that.
Now, you also had a personal relationship with him in terms of getting him to come to Albany, Georgia, to speak for the King Dinner, and that we're trying to remember the year was before 2008?
It was in 2004, okay. In January, I think it was January 19, 2004, and yes, I, as I said, met with him a number of times in D.C. To talk to him about issues of legislation, and with his civil rights background, he was an obvious choice to come down and speak, and coordinating his schedule was not the easiest. He was always in demand on that day to talk, but he joined us in person. I think he started, as you know, we did the dinner at night. He started the day in Atlanta at Ebenezer, and did a number of other things before coming down here that afternoon. And he drove down. He'd had a long day. Gave a fabulous speech. Wowed the auditorium, the Civic Center, nearly full capacity. And at the end of the day, I think you know this because your daughter is as well, Carla, that I'm a pilot, and I turned to Congressman Lewis and I said, well, I'll be happy to fly you home so you can get home sooner. And he thanked me graciously, but said, no, I think I'll get in the car. He confided in me. He didn't like small planes.
Wonderful story, wonderful story. I guess the stories in terms of where we are in our nation right now, and you've already pointed out that people from both sides of the aisle are just remembering him in just so many positive ways at a time when we were at each other, based on political party or political beliefs. Our Congressman John Lewis was able to bring people together, and he believed in nonviolence, and I think that speaks volumes in terms of what is needed today. And he was still fighting in a nonviolent way.
All the way to the end, and he was 80 years old I say years old, he's actually 80 years young, because he was, the schedule he kept and the things that he did, he was tireless in his pursuit of making things better, and he would never slow down. I didn't think we would ever see the day that unfortunately has just passed, but he leaves a legacy that is large. One of the things that I saw that I hope comes to fruition on social media is that each state in the country can put 2 statutes in the Capitol, and there is talk about trying to have one of those 2 be John Lewis. I think that would be so appropriate for all he's given to Georgia and our nation.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing, your interactions with him, your memories of him, and we just appreciate you being a part of this morning's dialogue. Thank you so much.
Always happy to be with you, Carl. Y'all have a great Sunday.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, I also had the opportunity to talk with the original freedom singer, Rutha Harris. You were at the first march on Washington in 1963, where a young John Lewis was there, the youngest person to speak at that march, and then again at the second march celebrating the 50th anniversary. So you were there with the original Freedom Singers. Talk about your impressions of Congressman Lewis, the young Lewis then, and then Congressman Lewis now.
The young congressman then is the same as he was now. He was real fiery, and he meant whatever he said. He's always been a person like that. He knew what he wanted to do, and he was not going to stop until he got what he was working for.
And so the crowd's response to him, at the original march, with him being as young as he was, I'm sure he was a little nervous, but I guess you couldn't tell that.
No, he was not nervous. He was not nervous. He was real strong, as he was in his later years.
What do you think? I'm sorry.
He's always been strong-minded. And he knew what he wanted to accomplish, and he set out to accomplish those goals.
What do you think his the most lasting legacy will be that he leaves us?
I'm hoping that it would be the voting rights bill, because he was adamant about the voting rights bill being signed. And what my hope is, it's all right to name a bridge after someone, but what I would like to see him recognized as the one who wanted to have the voting rights bill. That's my thing for him.
And you sent me a picture of the 2 of you. Talk about that.
Well, there was a celebration for him in Atlanta. As a matter of fact, it was July 18th, 2018. And there was a celebration for him, and I sang at that celebration.
Wow.
And that's the picture.
And so I guess all these years, and I'm sure he still remembered you.
Yes, he did. Well, we were in the same organization, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
And talk about that, because of course he knew the charades, and you all were working hard for civil rights in Albany and Southwest Georgia.
Yes, and in other counties too. I was just stationed here in Albany until it was time to begin the travel of raising funds for SNCC, which the original Freedom Singers did. And we traveled 50,000 plus miles in 9 months raising funds and telling the story of the civil rights movement through song.
Would you run into him at various events?
Sometimes. But he, after we did I would see him in Selma.
And in fact, you sang. Didn't you sing when he was there with President Obama?
I'm in Selma every year. So every time they would come, I would sing, yes.
And then any final thoughts about Congressman Lewis and this person, this spirit, this soul that we've lost?
Just like I said before, I would like to see the voting rights bill signed in his honor.
And with that, I say thank you so much for sharing your memories of Congressman John Lewis. And we've got more for you after the break. Stay with us. And welcome back, everybody. I am now speaking with the retired former CEO of course, the Albany Civil Rights Institute, W. Frank Wilson. And when we talk about Congressman John Lewis, of course, we talk and think about civil rights. So good to see you, sir, and hope retirement is doing well for you.
I'm enjoying it so far.
Very good. So when you think about Congressman John Lewis and civil rights, what comes to mind?
Determined, focused, relentless, and just a guy who just made civil rights his life's work.
And of course, when we, good trouble, I know that was trending after he passed. He thought that you should, make trouble in a good way, but still you wanted some outcomes. And so sometimes it's best not to just stay silent. You've got to make noise, and that's probably what a lot of people who worked throughout the movement adapted or adopted as their policy as well. You got to make noise. You've got to get attention, and sometimes people may not like what you have to say or do, but you have to make some good trouble.
Well, I'm reminded of the Dr. Vernon Johns, who was the predecessor to Martin Luther King at Dexter Avenue Church. Dr. Johns had a saying, if you see a good fight, get in it. And I think this was where John Lewis was about. He always saw a good fight, and he got in it, and it was to the betterment of mankind.
I do remember and want to remind everybody that when I say we, Albany, Georgia, hosted a Get in the Way, the journey of John Lewis, the first documentary biography about the Georgia congressman, was at the Municipal Auditorium in downtown Albany, and the screening was free, but donations were taken, and they benefited the Albany Civil Rights Institute. Over the years, did you have the opportunity to talk to Congressman or talk with Congressman Lewis?
I had the pleasure of working directly with Congressman Lewis when I was a resident of Atlanta. He had something called Christmas in July that benefited underprivileged children. So I had an opportunity to work with him in that program and found him to be a very humble guy. You would think a guy with his celebrity that he would be a little stuffed shirt, but he was very, very down to earth, easy to work with, and I really enjoyed working with him. And it was a pleasure during my time at the Civil Rights Institute to be able to bring Get in the Way to our community, because I think that a lot of our young folk just did not understand the value of John Lewis, and some of our older folk too. And so it was a great opportunity to do that. And at that time, we were able to honor one of our own, Charles Sherrod, who both were a part of the SNCC organization. And so it was a great evening for everyone.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your memories. And with that, I'll say have a wonderful Sunday, everybody. Hopefully, you've been able to reflect on the life of Congressman Lewis as well.
And I said to all of the young people, you must get out there and push and pull and make America what America should be for all of us.